The calm before the storm. Opening scene, cinematic. The air outside the Fulton County Courthouse carried that strange winter mix of cold air and hot asphalt, the smell of a city alive and buzzing, even at 7:45 in the morning. A thin fog hung low over the courthouse steps, blurring the hard lines of the building's marble facade. Reporters huddled near the front entrance like vultures waiting for their first whiff of blood. Josh Efird's black SUV rolled up to the curb, its tinted windows reflecting the dull gray sky. For a brief second, no one moved. Then, as if a silent signal had been given, the first camera flashed. A ripple of chaos spread instantly. Josh. Over here. Josh. Is it true she cheated on you with him? Josh, are you fighting for custody? Josh, what do you have to say about the new husband? The questions were bullets, each one designed to pierce, to get a reaction. Josh stepped out, straightening the collar of his dark navy coat. His eyes were fixed forward, his jaw set in stone. Not a glance to the left, not a single acknowledgement of the cameras snapping like rapid gunfire. He had done this walk before, too many times, but this morning felt heavier, as if every step toward those massive double doors was pulling him deeper into a story he couldn't escape. Narrator voiceover tone. This wasn't just another day in court. This was the day everything came to a head. A divorce trial, yes, but also something far more dangerous. Because buried in the paperwork and witness statements was a truth that could rip the Mama June family apart, forever. Inside the courthouse. The warmth of the courthouse lobby hit him instantly, but it didn't make him any more comfortable. His attorney, Michael Crane, was waiting by the metal detectors, a thin man with sharp eyes and a sharper tongue. You ready for this? Crane asked without looking up from the folder in his hands. I've been ready for months, Josh replied, though his voice carried that tightness that comes from too little sleep and too much stress. They walked toward courtroom 4B, the echo of their footsteps bouncing off the tiled floor. When Josh entered, he didn't need to scan the room to know where she was. Mama June sat at the far side of the courtroom, her cream blazer immaculate, her blonde hair styled into soft curls that didn't move an inch when she turned her head. She didn't look at him. But the man beside her did. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and wore a tailored navy suit that screamed money. His hair was slicked back, his eyes cool and unwavering. There was no smirk, no visible hostility, just a steady, unreadable stare. That's him, Crane murmured. The one they're calling the new husband. Josh's lip curled. He won't be smiling for long. Narrator tone. For months, rumors had swirled, late-night sightings, mysterious photographs, secret meetings in diners 2 counties away. But today, the whispers had a name, a face, and a seat in the courtroom. The judge arrives. The judge, a stern woman in her late 50s with a reputation for zero tolerance toward theatrics, entered, and the chatter died instantly. Court is now in session for the matter of Efird versus Shannon, she announced. The opening formalities were mechanical, witness lists, procedural clarifications, evidence submissions. The type of legal choreography that hides the fact that everyone in the room is bracing for a bomb to drop. The first witness. Josh expected the first witness to be someone harmless, maybe a financial advisor or a mutual friend who could ease into the day's proceedings. It wasn't. The court clerk called, Daniel Hart. A man in his mid-40s rose from the gallery. He wore a simple gray suit, carried a leather satchel, and had the kind of posture that comes from years of waiting quietly in shadows. Mr. Hart, the judge said, please state your name and occupation for the record. Daniel Hart, he replied, licensed private investigator. Josh felt his heartbeat quicken. The envelope. Josh's attorney stepped forward. Mr. Hart, during your investigation, did you find evidence suggesting that the respondent, Mama June Shannon, engaged in a romantic relationship with another man while still married to my client? Hart reached into his satchel and pulled out a thick manila envelope. The sound it made hitting the table was heavier than paper should sound. Yes, Hart said, his voice calm but cutting. And it's all in here. The press gallery erupted in camera flashes. Mama June shifted in her seat, the first sign that she was rattled. Still, she didn't look at Josh. Narrator tone. In that envelope was more than paper. It was dynamite, evidence that, if true, could destroy reputations, divide loyalties, and end whatever remained of the Mama June family bond. And everyone in that courtroom, the lawyers, the press, even the judge, knew it. Josh's flashback. For a moment, Josh was. Secrets spilled. The photograph still hovered in the air between the attorney's fingers, the glossy paper catching the light from the courtroom's high windows. The silence stretched for a beat too long, the kind that makes your pulse loud in your own ears. Mama June's lawyer, Valerie Brooks, rose to her feet with a sharp rustle of papers. Objection, Your Honor, she said, her voice crisp. One still image is not proof of any wrongdoing. We move to strike this from the record unless. Overruled, the judge interrupted, her tone flat but final. The court will decide the weight of the evidence. Brooks sat down, her expression smooth as glass, but her pen tapped against her legal pad like a metronome ticking toward an explosion. What no one knew, not Josh, not the press, not even the judge, was that the photograph was only the opening move. The envelope held more than still frames. It held stories. Patterns. Pieces of a puzzle that, once assembled, would paint a picture no one could look away from. The second photograph. Josh's attorney, Crane, held up the next image. This time it wasn't a cafe. It was the lobby of a mid-range hotel just off the interstate. The timestamp in the corner read 1:14 a.m. Mama June and the man in the navy suit stood close together near the front desk. Her head was tilted toward him, his arm hovered behind her back in a way that could be read as protective or possessive. The murmurs in the courtroom swelled again, low but steady. Josh's POV. Josh's nails dug into the armrest of his chair. He remembered that night. He remembered trying to call her around midnight, only for the call to go unanswered. She'd texted him the next morning, fell asleep early. Talk later. That lie now sat there, frozen in a time-stamped photograph for the entire world to see. The receipts. Crane placed a series of printed receipts on the evidence table. Each bore the same date as the hotel photograph. One was for a room at that very hotel. Another for dinner at a steakhouse 20 minutes away, 2 entrees, 2 glasses of wine. The total, $142.86. Josh felt a bitter smile twitch at the corner of his mouth. She had always said she didn't even like steak. The text messages. Then came the printouts of text conversations. The messages were redacted, names replaced with contact number 1 and contact number 2, but the implication was clear. Contact number 1, can't wait to see you tonight. Been thinking about you all day. Contact number 2, me too. You always know how to make me smile. Contact number 1, you deserve it, babe. The courtroom atmosphere shifted. Reporters' pens scratched faster, and even the judge leaned forward slightly. Narrator tone. Evidence is a strange thing. Alone, each piece can be explained away, a photo, a dinner, a text. But together, they form something heavier. Something harder to ignore. Something that starts to feel like the truth. Mama June's reaction. For the first time, Mama June turned fully toward Josh. Her eyes were narrowed, her lips pressed into a thin line. It wasn't the look of a woman caught off guard. It was the look of a woman daring him to push further. The first crack. Josh shifted in his seat, his breathing heavier now. Crane noticed and placed a hand on his arm, a silent warning. Not yet, Crane whispered. Let me build it. But Josh's knee bounced restlessly under the table. The investigator speaks. Mr. Hart, Crane continued, during your investigation, Did you witness any direct acts of intimacy between the respondent and the man in these photographs? Hart glanced at Mama June before answering. Yes. On multiple occasions. Brooks was on her feet again. Objection. Vague and inflammatory. Overruled, the judge said without hesitation. The courtroom was now a powder keg, each testimony a spark. The witness list surprise. Just when the tension seemed ready to snap, Crane turned to the judge. At this time, Your Honor, the plaintiff calls an additional witness, one who can speak to the respondent's personal statements regarding this relationship. The name he read from his notes was one Josh hadn't expected. It was someone from inside the family. Someone who, until now, had been publicly neutral. Narrator voice, lowering. And this is where the trial shifted. Because when blood turns against blood, there's no telling how far the truth, or the lies, will go. The walk to the stand. The family member, whose identity I'll reveal in Chapter 3, rose from the gallery and began the slow walk toward the witness stand. Cameras snapped, the press practically leaning over the railing. Josh's pulse thundered in his ears. Mama June's nails clicked against the table, her gaze locked on the witness with something between warning and rage. The witness raised their right hand, swore the oath, and sat down. Crane leaned in for the first question, and the gallery leaned with him. The other man. Opening scene. The scrape of the chair against the polished wood floor was louder than it should have been. Every head in the courtroom turned. The witness's Dodo, Mama June's own sister, adjusted her cardigan and kept her eyes forward as she made her way to the stand. She didn't look at Josh. She didn't look at June. She just walked, one deliberate step after another, as though she'd rehearsed it in her mind 1,000 times. Josh felt his chest tighten. Of all the people who could have been called, this was one he hadn't anticipated. Family court is messy enough when outsiders testify. But when a sibling takes the stand against their own blood, it's not just evidence. It's betrayal. Swearing in. The bailiff held out the small black Bible. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? I do, Dodo said, her voice low but steady. She settled into the witness chair, crossing her hands in her lap. The first question. Crane didn't waste time. Miss Shannon, can you tell the court about any conversations you've had with your sister regarding her relationship with the man seated beside her today? A pin could have dropped in the courtroom and been heard. Dodo hesitated. Her gaze flickered briefly to June, who stared back with an expression that could have cut glass, then she looked at the judge. Yes, she said finally. She told me, he makes her feel more alive than Josh ever did. The gasps. The sound wasn't a single gasp, it was a wave, rolling through the courtroom, hitting the press gallery, the spectators, even the judge. Josh's attorney leaned back, letting the words hang in the air. June's reaction. June's mouth tightened. Her lawyer placed a calming hand on her arm, but June pulled away, eyes locked on her sister. The tension between them was almost visible, like heat rising off asphalt in summer. More testimony. Crane continued, did she ever indicate to you when this relationship began? Dodo's voice wavered for the first time. She said it started before she filed for divorce. She told me she didn't love Josh anymore, and that she hadn't for a long time. Josh's hands clenched so tightly his knuckles whitened. Narrator voice. It wasn't just what she said. It was who she was to June. A sister's words carry weight. And in that courtroom, they hit like a hammer. Cross-examination. Valerie Brooks, June's attorney, stood slowly. Miss Shannon, isn't it true you and your sister have had a strained relationship for years? In fact, didn't you once go 3 years without speaking to her? Dodo nodded. Yes. But that doesn't change what she told me. Brooks stepped closer. And isn't it possible you're misinterpreting her words? That maybe she was venting during a difficult time? Possible? Dodo said, her voice firm now. No. She was smiling when she said it. Like she was proud. Josh's boiling point. Josh's knee bounced faster under the table. His breathing grew heavier. He stared at June, but she refused to meet his eyes. Crane glanced at him, a silent warning again, hold it together. The spark. Brooks turned back toward her table, but Josh suddenly leaned forward. Why don't you just tell them the rest, he blurted, his voice echoing in the courtroom. Mr. Efird, the judge warned. Josh's eyes locked on Dodo. Tell them what she said about taking Ella away from me. The room went still. Dodo's final blow. Dodo swallowed hard. She said, once the papers were signed, she'd make sure Josh never saw his daughter again. The words landed like a sledgehammer. Narrator tone. In that moment, the trial stopped being about infidelity. It became a battle for blood. And battles for blood never end clean. The new husband speaks. The man in the navy suit finally leaned forward, whispering something to June. She gave the smallest nod. Then, to everyone's surprise, he stood. Your Honor, Brooks said quickly, my client's partner requests to make a brief statement. The judge hesitated, then allowed it. He walked to the stand with calm, deliberate steps, his expression unreadable. And when he opened his mouth, his first sentence made half the courtroom gasp again. The name that shook the court. Opening scene, courtroom, 10:27 a.m. The fluorescent lights above the Colquitt County Courthouse flickered faintly, like they, too, sensed the tension crawling through the air. Every cough, every whisper echoed in the old wooden chamber. Josh sat at the defense table, his hands clasped so tightly his knuckles had turned white. Across the room, June leaned toward her attorney, whispering something with a sly smirk that Josh couldn't quite ignore. The bailiff's voice cut through the murmurs. Your Honor, the witness is ready to be sworn in. All eyes shifted to the tall, broad-shouldered man stepping forward from the back of the courtroom. He wore a tailored charcoal suit that seemed out of place in this small-town courthouse. His shoes gleamed under the dim lights, and his stare was fixed straight ahead, no glances, no hesitation. Josh's chest tightened. There he is. The man approached the witness stand, placing one hand on the Bible as the clerk recited the oath. His voice was low, controlled, and without a hint of hesitation. I do. The judge looked down at the paperwork before him, then addressed the man directly. State your full name for the record. The man leaned toward the microphone, his lips parting just enough to let the syllables drop like stones into the still air. Elliot Grant. It was just a name. But in that instant, the room changed.